The twin sons of Zyra, 7 beat down like molten hammers on the cracked dunes of the Crimson Wastes, baking the sand into glassy shards that glittered like shattered promises. Dust storms had swept through hours earlier, leaving behind a battlefield littered with wreckage, smoldering hover tanks, broken drones, and the still forms of soldiers from both sides of the war between the Terran Alliance and the Varelian Dominion. Among the chaos stood Corporal Joran Vale, sweat-streaked and exhausted, his armor scorched and dented, one boot missing its sole. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not really. A palace guard reassigned to frontline duty after insubordination, he told a general his mustache looked like a dying caterpillar. Joran had spent the last 3 days dragging wounded allies to medevac shuttles while dodging plasma fire and sand vipers. He hadn't seen the princess until she fell. One moment, the dune ahead was empty save for a toppled Varelian skiff. The next, a flash of orange hair tumbled from behind it like fire caught in wind. She hit the ground hard, her green skin smeared with ash and blood, one arm clutching a gash across her ribs. Her royal robes, once shimmering with iridescent thread woven from moonmoth silk, were torn and blackened at the edges. Joran recognized her instantly. Princess Lyra of House Solvith, youngest daughter of Empress Vela, famed for her sharp tongue, sharper mind, and the fact that she'd once challenged a warlord to a duel over a misplaced dessert tart. Now, she lay gasping, eyes wide with pain and defiance, as 3 Dominion assassins emerged from the smoke, their obsidian armor humming with cloaking tech. Joran didn't think. He lunged. His pulse rifle was out of charge, his sidearm jammed. All he had was the ceremonial short sword strapped to his hip, a relic from his palace guard days, more decorative than deadly, its hilt wrapped in faded blue leather, its blade dull from neglect. He yanked it free just as the first assassin swung a vibroaxe toward Lyra's neck. The clash rang out like a bell across the wastes. But then, something impossible happened. The moment Joran's blade met the assassin's weapon, a blinding white light erupted from the sword. Not sparks, not energy discharge. Pure, radiant luminescence, pulsing like a heartbeat, casting long shadows even under the twin suns. The desert stilled. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The assassins staggered back, shielding their eyes. Lyra stared up at Joran, her pupils dilating in awe. From the ridge above, a surviving Varelian scout cried out in the old tongue, voice cracking with reverence. Korvan el-Shah, the chosen one! Another echoed in Terran standard. Within seconds, the cry spread like wildfire among the scattered survivors. Human medics, Varelian warriors, even a few neutral scavengers hiding in wrecked transports. They rose from cover, pointing, shouting, some dropping to their knees. Joran stood frozen, sword still raised, its glow now softening to a steady silver-blue aura that traced ancient glyphs along the blade. Glyphs no one had seen in centuries. What is this? Joran whispered, his voice hoarse. Lyra pushed herself up onto one elbow, wincing but smiling faintly. You pulled the blade of Ethon, she said, her voice raspy but clear. It hasn't awakened since the Sundering War. Legend says it only answers to the one destined to unite our peoples. I didn't choose it, Joran protested, glancing around nervously. I just grabbed the nearest thing. It was literally hanging on my belt, because I forgot to turn it in when they transferred me. A nearby Varelian elder, her face lined with age and soot, stepped forward slowly. The blade chooses, young human, not the hand. Joran wanted to argue, to laugh it off as some cosmic joke. But then the assassins regrouped. Their leader, taller than the others, removed his helmet to reveal violet eyes burning with fanaticism. The false light dies today, he snarled. The Solvith line ends with her. He raised a wrist-mounted disruptor cannon. Joran didn't hesitate this time. He shoved Lyra behind him, raising the glowing sword instinctively. As if guided by unseen hands, his body moved, sidestepping the blast, twisting into a parry that sent a shockwave through the sand. The blade hummed, warm in his grip, almost encouraging. He slashed, not with brute force, but with precision he didn't know he possessed. The assassin's cannon arm fell to the ground, severed cleanly. The other two charged. What followed wasn't a battle, it was a dance. Joran moved with uncanny grace, the sword lighting his path, deflecting plasma bolts, slicing through armor joints with surgical accuracy. He wasn't a warrior. He was a guard who'd once tripped over his own boots during a royal procession. Yet now, under the desert sky, he fought like a storm given form. When it was over, the assassins lay unconscious, bound by vines summoned from Lyra's hidden biotech bracelet. The survivors gathered closer, murmuring in hushed tones. Some wept, others bowed. Lyra stood shakily, pressing a hand to her wound. "You saved me," she said simply. "You're bleeding," Joran replied, suddenly awkward. "We need to get you to a medic." She laughed. A bright, musical sound that cut through the tension. "You just wielded the sacred blade of my ancestors, faced death without flinching, and your biggest concern is my bandage? Well, yeah." He scratched his head with his free hand, smearing dust across his forehead. "Also, I think I left my lunchbox in the evac shuttle. It had my mom's pickled radishes in it." Lyra blinked, then burst out laughing again, clutching her side. "By the twin moons, you're ridiculous. And you're glowing," Joran said, noticing faint golden patterns emerging on her skin where the blade's light had touched her. She sobered slightly, touching her cheek. "The bond has begun," she murmured. "The prophecy speaks of this, the chosen one and the last heir, marked by Ethan's light." Prophecy? Bond? Wait, what bond? Joran's stomach dropped. "Please don't tell me this involves marriage or weird alien rituals involving fermented slugs." "No slugs," Lyra said, grinning despite her pain. "But marriage? Possibly. Depends on how fast you can learn to curtsy." Before he could protest further, a low rumble shook the ground. From the horizon, a fleet of Varelian gunships descended, their hulls gleaming like emerald beetles. At their lead flew the royal barge, massive, ornate, shaped like a crescent moon with wings of solar sail. It landed softly on the dunes, kicking up a gentle wave of red sand. Empress Vela emerged, taller than her daughter, her green skin etched with ceremonial scars, her orange hair braided with star metal beads. She surveyed the scene with eyes that missed nothing. Her gaze locked onto Joran, and the still glowing sword in his hand. She walked toward him, each step deliberate. The crowd parted like water. Joran swallowed hard, suddenly aware of his grimy uniform, his missing boot, the radish smell probably lingering on his breath. The Empress stopped before him. Then, to everyone's shock, including Joran's, she knelt. "The blade of Ethan has spoken," she declared, voice resonant with power and sorrow. "For 500 years we waited. Through civil wars, betrayals, the silence of the stars, we waited. And now a human, a Terran, stands before us, not as conqueror, but protector." She rose, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "My daughter's life was forfeit today. You gave it back. More than that, you reignited hope." Joran shifted uncomfortably. "Your Majesty, I'm just a guy who got transferred to the wrong platoon. I alphabetize my socks and cry during dog rescue videos. I'm not chosen material." Empress Vela's lips twitched. "Chosen ones rarely believe they are. That's what makes them real." She turned to the crowd. "Prepare the sky barge. We return to Salveth Spire. The chosen one and the princess will ride with me." As they boarded the barge, Joran glanced back at the battlefield, the place where his ordinary life ended. Below, the sword's glow faded, returning to its dull state, but the warmth in his palm remained. Inside the royal vessel, Lyra was tended to by medrones that hummed soothing lullabies in harmonic frequencies. She insisted Joran sit beside her. "You're not getting away that easily," she teased. "I still don't understand why me," he said, staring at his hands. "There were better soldiers, braver men." "Maybe," Lyra said softly, reaching out to take his hand. Her touch was cool, calming. "But courage isn't always about strength. Sometimes it's about kindness in the middle of chaos. You saw someone hurt and you acted. No politics, no orders, just you." Joran looked into her eyes, golden green, flecked with starlight, and felt something shift inside him. Not destiny, not yet, but possibility. The barge soared above the crimson wastes, heading toward the distant spires of the capital city, where crystalline towers pierced the clouds and gardens floated on anti-grav platforms. Below, the desert stretched endlessly, scarred by war but still beautiful in its harshness. Back at Salveth Spire, however, trouble brewed. Not all Varelians welcomed a human chosen one. High Chancellor Drell, a hawk-faced traditionalist with a disdain for off-worlders, watched the barge's approach from the obsidian balcony. His fingers tightened around a data slate showing Joran's file. Corporal Joran Vale, minor disciplinary record, no combat commendations, assigned to Palace Guard due to familial connections. Uncle served as ambassador. He's a nobody, Drell muttered to his aide. A pawn. The Empress is desperate. The blade must have malfunctioned. Or perhaps the stars finally smiled upon us, the aide ventured cautiously. Drell's eyes narrowed. Or perhaps someone made it smile. He tapped a command into his wristcom. Activate Protocol Umbra. If this human is truly the chosen one, let's see if he survives the trial of echoes. Unaware of the plot forming against him, Joran was given quarters fit for royalty. Silken beds, self-warming baths, fruit that changed flavor based on mood. He ate 3 helpings of joy peaches before realizing they made him inexplicably happy and slightly dizzy. Lyra visited him that evening, her wound already healing thanks to Varelian nanites. She wore a simple tunic now, her hair loose around her shoulders. You look overwhelmed, she said, sitting cross-legged on a floating cushion. I keep expecting someone to yell gotcha and drag me back to latrine duty, Joran admitted. She smiled. You're stuck with us now. The bond grows stronger each hour. Soon you'll start dreaming in Varelian. Great. I barely passed basic xenolinguistics. They talked for hours about Earth, about Zyra 7, about her childhood racing skyskiffs through canyon storms, his teenage years fixing antique motorcycles in Arizona. He told her about his sister's wedding he'd missed because of deployment. She confessed she'd never had a real friend outside court protocol. When she left, she paused at the door. Tomorrow the council meets. They'll test you. Don't try to impress them. Just be honest. Even if honesty gets me thrown into a lava pit? Especially then. The next day, in the Grand Conclave Chamber, a vast dome opened to the sky, its floor inlaid with constellations. Joran stood alone before the Council of 9. Empress Vela sat at the apex, Lyra beside her. Drell watched from the shadows. The High Seer, an ancient Varelian with milky eyes, stepped forward. To confirm the bond, you must undergo the trial of echoes. Enter the mirror maze beneath the spire. Face your deepest fear. Return with the Heartstone. Joran paled. How do I know I'll come back? You won't, Drell said smoothly. If you're unworthy. Lyra started to protest, but her mother raised a hand. The trial is tradition. Even I underwent it. Joran took a deep breath. Fine. But if I die, someone please feed my cactus. His name's Steve. The maze was worse than he imagined. Walls of liquid crystal shifted constantly, reflecting distorted versions of himself. Failure after failure. There he was, failing boot camp. There, watching his squad die because he hesitated. There, alone on a park bench back on Earth, forgotten by everyone. Then, the final chamber. In the center floated the Heartstone, a pulsing orb of amber light. But guarding it was a figure in scorched Terran armor. His own face, twisted with rage and grief. You let them all die, the echo hissed. You're not a hero. You're a coward who got lucky. Jordan's hands shook. He wanted to run. But then he remembered Lyra's words. Just be honest. I am scared, he said aloud. I did fail people, but I'm trying. Isn't that enough? The echo faltered, then dissolved. The Heartstone drifted into his palm, warm and steady. When he emerged, the entire court was waiting. Drell's face was thunderous. The Empress smiled. Lyra ran to him, throwing her arms around him before remembering decorum, and not caring. That night, celebrations erupted across the city. Bioluminescent kites filled the sky. Musicians played songs older than cities. Joran, slightly tipsy on fermented nectar wine, danced badly with Lyra under the twin moons. But as the party raged, Drell met with cloaked figures in the lower catacombs. The bond strengthens, he said. We must act before the rite of union. One figure removed her hood, purple-skinned, white-haired, eyes cold as void. The Shadow Syndicate stands ready. The human dies before dawn. Meanwhile, high in the Starlight Garden, Joran and Lyra sat on a balcony overlooking the galaxy. You know, he said quietly, back on Earth, I used to look up at the stars and wonder if anyone was looking back. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Now you know. He took her hand. What happens next? She smiled. We write the next chapter. Together. And though danger loomed in the shadows, for that one perfect moment, under alien stars, a human guard and an alien princess found something rare. Peace, laughter, and the fragile, glowing beginning of something far greater than either had ever dreamed. The peace didn't last. By dawn, alarms blared through Solvith Spire like wounded beasts. Crimson emergency glyphs pulsed along the crystalline corridors. and the air filled with the sharp scent of ozone as defense shields flickered online. Joran jolted awake in his silk-draped bed, heart hammering, to find Lyra already standing by the window, her expression grim, one hand pressed against a glowing comm panel embedded in the wall. "They've breached the lower archives," she said without turning. "Drell's faction. They're not just after you. They're trying to activate the core nullifier." Joran scrambled out of bed, still in yesterday's borrowed sleep tunic. "The what?" "The weapon that ended the Sundering War," Lyra explained, finally facing him. Her eyes were hard, but her fingers trembled slightly. "It doesn't kill, it unravels molecular bonds. One pulse, and an entire city turns to dust. My ancestors sealed it away beneath the palace after swearing never to use it again. And Drell wants to use it on us?" "On you," she corrected. "He believes if he erases the Chosen One before the bond fully forms, the prophecy collapses. The blade will go dormant again. Varelia stays pure." She spat the last word like poison. Before Joran could respond, the door hissed open. Two royal guards, tall, green-skinned warriors with plasma lances, entered, bowing quickly. "Princess, the Empress orders your immediate evacuation to the Sky Vault. The human is to be escorted to the armory for protection." Lyra's jaw tightened. "No, he stays with me." "Your Highness, Protocol. Protocol got my cousin assassinated last cycle," she snapped. Then, softer, "I won't lose another person I care about to politics." The guards exchanged glances but stepped aside. Joran grabbed his boots, still mismatched, one military issue, the other a soft Varelian slipper Lyra had given him for comfort, and followed her into the corridor. The palace, once serene and luminous, now thrummed with tension. Servants hurried past with sealed data crates. Medics rolled biostasis pods toward secure chambers. Somewhere below, the deep thud of breaching charges echoed like distant thunder. They reached the grand stairwell just as a squad of rebel soldiers stormed up from the sublevels. These weren't Dominion assassins. They wore modified royal armor, their insignias scratched out, faces hidden behind rebreathers. At their lead strode Chancellor Drell himself, flanked by the purple-skinned woman Joran had seen only in nightmares, or so he thought. Her white hair was braided tightly down her back, her violet eyes locking onto him with predatory focus. She carried no visible weapon, but the air around her crackled faintly, like static before a storm. "Princess Lyra," Drell called, voice echoing off the high arches. "Step aside. This farce ends now." Lyra stepped in front of Joran, arms spread. "You'll have to go through me." Drell sighed, almost sadly. "Must I remind you, child, that I held you when your mother was exiled during the Purge? I fed you when the ration lines failed. And now you side with an off-world mongrel over your own blood." "He's not a mongrel," Lyra shot back. "He's the first person in this cursed palace who's ever treated me like a person instead of a political asset." Joran's chest tightened. He hadn't realized she felt that way. The white-haired woman stepped forward. "Enough talk." She raised a hand, and the floor beneath Joran's feet liquefied. He yelped, stumbling backward as the stone turned to quicksand-like sludge. Lyra lunged to grab him, but tendrils of shadow erupted from the walls, wrapping around her wrists and pulling her away. "Kayles!" Lyra shouted, using the woman's true name. "Don't do this." Kayles, the Shadow Syndicate enforcer, former royal guard, rumored to have once saved Empress Vela's life before vanishing into exile, didn't flinch. "I serve balance, princess, not sentiment." Joran hit the ground hard, rolling just as a bolt of dark energy seared the spot where he'd stood. He scrambled behind a marble pillar, heart pounding. His ceremonial sword, now strapped to his hip again, felt warm against his skin, as if urging him to act. "Think, Joran. You're not a hero, but you're all they've got." He remembered something Lyra had told him during their late-night talks. Varelian tech responds to intent, not commands. If your heart's true, even a rock can become a key. He closed his eyes, gripping the sword hilt. Not for power, not for glory, just to protect her. The blade ignited, not with blinding light this time, but with a soft, steady hum, like a heartbeat shared between two souls. He burst from cover, sword raised. Kayles turned, surprised, as the glow washed over her. For a split second, her stoic mask cracked, her eyes widened, lips parting in something like recognition. "You," she whispered. Then the moment passed. She vanished in a swirl of smoke, reappearing behind him. But Joran was ready. He spun, not to strike, but to deflect, a move he'd seen Lyra practice in the training yard. The sword met her energy dagger midair, and a shockwave rippled outward, shattering nearby stained glass windows depicting ancient treaties. Drell, seeing his advantage slipping, activated a wrist device. A low-frequency drone began to whine from deep below. "The nullifier's charging," Lyra cried, straining against her bindings. "Joran, you have to stop it. Only the Chosen One can override the core sequence." "How?" he yelled, ducking another strike from Kaylee's. "The Heartstone. Use it with the blade at the central node." Joran didn't hesitate. He pulled the amber orb from his pocket. It had fused to his belt loop overnight, warm and pulsing like a second heart. He sprinted down the stairwell, taking the steps 3 at a time, Kaylee's hot on his heels. Behind him, Lyra summoned vines from the palace's living architecture, tangling Drell's legs long enough to break free. The core chamber lay at the planet's geothermal heart, a cavernous space where molten rivers of liquid crystal flowed beneath a floating platform. At its center hovered the nullifier, a sphere of black metal covered in rotating glyphs, already glowing red with activation energy. Joran leaped onto the platform. The heat was unbearable. Sweat poured down his face. The Heartstone burned in his palm. Kaylee's appeared before him, blocking his path. "You don't understand what you're stopping," she said, voice low. "The Terrans bombarded our colonies during the border skirmishes. Your people started this war." "My people aren't perfect," Joran panted. "But neither are yours. Drell's not saving Varelia. He's destroying its future." He met her gaze. "You protected the Empress once. Why serve someone who'd erase hope?" For the first time, Kaylee's hesitated. Then, Lyra crashed through the ceiling on a vine swing, landing between them. "Kaylee's," she said, breathing hard. "Mother never blamed you for leaving. She kept your quarters untouched for 20 cycles. She said you'd return when the stars aligned." Kaylee's eyes flickered toward the nullifier, then back to Joran. "The blade, it chose him, just like it chose her." "Her?" Joran asked. But there was no time. The nullifier emitted a final, deafening chime. Activation complete. Joran didn't think. He slammed the Heartstone onto the central node and thrust the glowing sword into the energy conduit. Light exploded. Not destruction, but restoration. The nullifier's red glow softened to gold. The glyphs reversed. The weapon powered down, sinking gently into the platform as if sighing in relief. Silence fell. Kaylee's lowered her weapon. "The prophecy, it wasn't just about uniting worlds," she murmured. "It was about healing them." Above, Drell's scream of rage echoed down the shaft, but it was cut short by the arrival of Empress Vela's elite guard, led by none other than the old scout who'd first declared Joran the Chosen One. The rebellion was over. In the days that followed, Salvath Spire began to heal. Repairs commenced. Traitors were tried, not executed, per Lyra's insistence, but exiled to rehabilitation colonies. Kaylee's, surprisingly, requested to stay, as Lyra's personal protector and advisor. "Someone has to keep you both from setting the gardens on fire with romantic picnics," she deadpanned, though her eyes held warmth. Joran, meanwhile, struggled with his new role. He wasn't a diplomat. He tripped during formal processions again. He accidentally insulted an ambassador by calling his ceremonial headdress adorable. But he also mediated disputes between human refugees and Varelian citizens, helped rebuild a school in the lower districts, and, most importantly, sat with Lyra every evening in the Starlight Garden, talking about everything and nothing. One night, as twin moons cast silver paths across the dunes beyond the palace, Lyra turned to him. "The bond is nearly complete," she said softly. "Soon we'll undergo the rite of union. It's more than marriage. It's a merging of destinies. Our children will carry both bloodlines. They'll be bridges." Joran swallowed. "I'm scared I'll mess it up." She took his hands, her golden-green eyes holding his. "You already saved me. Not with a sword. With kindness. That's the real magic." He smiled. "Does this mean I get to keep the sword?" "It's yours," she said, "though I hear it complains when you leave it in the bath." They laughed, the sound carrying into the quiet desert night. Far below, in the rebuilt core chamber, the blade of Ethon rested in its new stand, no longer dull, no longer forgotten. And if anyone listened closely, they might have heard it hum contentedly. Weeks passed in a fragile calm. The rite of union loomed on the horizon like a promise and a threat. Preparations swept through Salvath Spire, Ceremonial vines bloomed with bioluminescent flowers, ancestral robes were unsealed from climate vaults, and emissaries from neutral star systems arrived bearing gifts of rare minerals and memory crystals. Joran endured endless fittings, language drills, and etiquette lessons that left him dizzy, but he never complained. Not when Lyra practiced her vows in the garden at midnight, voice trembling with hope. Not when Kayleigh quietly taught him defensive stances, just in case. He was determined to be worthy not of prophecy, but of her. But peace, especially in the wake of betrayal, is rarely more than a pause between storms. The first twist came not from within, but from the stars. A Terran Alliance dreadnought, the Iron Resolve, dropped out of warp just beyond Zyra 7's orbital perimeter. No hails, no flags of truce, just silence, and the ominous hum of charged plasma cannons. Empress Vela summoned Joran and Lyra to the war room, her face unreadable. Holographic displays showed the dreadnought flanked by 3 escort frigates. "Admiral Corvus," she said, voice tight, "your former commanding officer." Joran's blood ran cold. Corvus, a brute who'd once ordered a civilian transport shot down for delaying maneuvers, had despised Joran for his soft-hearted idealism. Now, he hovered over the planet that had declared Joran its savior. "He's here for me," Joran said. "Or to reclaim what he sees as a stolen asset," Lyra countered. "You're a human soldier. In their eyes, you've defected." Before they could plan, a priority transmission crackled through. Admiral Corvus's face filled the main screen. Bald, scarred, eyes like flint. "Corporal Vale," he barked. "You are hereby ordered to surrender yourself and the alien artifact you stole, the so-called Chosen Blade, to Terran custody. Refusal will be interpreted as treason. We have authorization to level Salvath Spire if necessary." Lyra stepped forward. "This is Princess Lyra of House Salvath. You will address my betrothed with respect, or your fleet will taste the wrath of our planetary defense grid." Corvus sneered. "Cute. Tell your green-skinned pet I don't negotiate with Xenos." The screen went dark. Panic rippled through the court. Some urged immediate evacuation. Others demanded preemptive strikes. But Joran stood still, jaw clenched. "He's bluffing," he said finally. "The Alliance doesn't want war with Varelia. They're stretched thin on the Helios front. This is personal." "Then we give him personal," Kayleigh said, emerging from the shadows. "Let him land a delegation, under truce protocol. We'll meet him in the glass arena." It was a risk, but it was the only way to avoid bloodshed. 3 days later, beneath a sky streaked with auroras, Admiral Corvus strode into the arena flanked by 6 armored Marines. He wore no helmet, his chest heavy with medals. His eyes locked onto Joran the moment he entered. "You look soft," Corvus growled. "Living with aliens has made you weak." "I've learned compassion," Joran replied evenly. "Something your file suggests you've never tried." Murmurs rose from the Varelian spectators. Corvus's hand twitched toward his sidearm, but the rules of truce held. "I'm here to offer you a choice," the Admiral said, voice dropping. "Return to Earth with me. Testify that this prophecy is Varelian propaganda. In exchange, you get full reinstatement, a medal, and a quiet life back home. Or," he glanced at Lyra, "you stay, and when we glass this rock, she dies screaming." Joran's fists tightened. But before he could respond, Lyra stepped forward, holding a small data slate. "Admiral," she said sweetly, "while you were en route, we decrypted your private comms logs. Interesting reading, especially the part where you sold Terran troop positions to the Helio Syndicate for credits." Corvus paled. "That's fabricated." "Is it?" She tapped the slate. A recording played, his voice, clear as day. "Move the 3rd Battalion into Sector Theta. They'll be sitting ducks." Gasps echoed through the arena. Even Corvus's own Marines exchanged uneasy glances. "You're finished," Lyra said. "Stand down, or your fleet becomes your tomb." For a long moment Corvus stared at her, then at Joran. Something flickered in his eyes. Not fear. Shame? Regret? Then he laughed, harsh and hollow. "Fine. Keep your fairy tale." He turned to leave, then paused. "But know this, Vale. The Alliance High Command already knows about the blade. They won't stop coming. And next time, it won't be just me." He left. The fleet withdrew. Relief washed over the city. But Joran felt no joy, only dread, because Corvus was right. The second twist struck 2 nights later, not from space, but from within the palace walls. Joran woke to the scent of burning herbs and the sound of whispering in Old Varelian. He found Lyra kneeling in the Sanctum of Echoes, a hidden chamber beneath the royal library, surrounded by floating glyphs and a circle of black candles. Her skin shimmered with unnatural silver veins, her orange hair floating as if underwater. "Lyra," he whispered. She didn't turn. "The bond, it's accelerating," she said, voice layered with echoes. "The rite wasn't just symbolic. It's biological. Our DNA is merging. But my body, it's rejecting yours." Joran's heart stopped. "What?" Kaylee's appeared beside him, face grim. "It's the shadow gene. All Solvath royals carry it, a dormant trait that activates during union with non-Varelians. In ancient times, it caused madness or death. But the prophecy assumed the chosen one would be Varelian," Kaylee's interrupted. "No one foresaw a human." Joran dropped to his knees beside Lyra, taking her hands. They were ice-cold. "There has to be a cure." "There is," she whispered. "The tears of Ethon, a crystalline nectar that blooms once every century in the heart of the Crimson Wastes, the very place we met." "But that's deep in the Scorchlands," Kaylee said, "patrolled by Sand Wyrms, radiation storms, and Dominion remnants." "I don't care," Joran said. "I'll go." "No," Lyra gasped, gripping his arm. "If you leave, the bond fractures. I'll die faster. Then I'll bring the desert to you," he said fiercely. He spent the next day studying ancient maps, consulting biosages, even bribing a grizzled scavenger named Zik, who claimed to have seen the tears bloom during the last solar eclipse. "They grow inside a singing crystal," Zik wheezed, chewing on synth leather. "But only if you offer something precious in return. Not credits, not weapons. Something true." That night, Joran made his decision. He wouldn't go alone. With Empress Vela's reluctant blessing, he assembled a small team. Kaylee's for combat, Zik for navigation, and a young Varelian botanist named Mira, whose family had cultivated healing flora for generations. They left under cover of a sandstorm, aboard a cloaked skiff painted to mimic wreckage. The journey was brutal. Sand Wyrms, massive, serpentine creatures with plasma fangs, attacked twice. Radiation pockets forced them to reroute through a canyon filled with ghost echoes of past battles. Once, Joran swore he saw his dead squadmates waving from the dunes. On the third day, they found it. The Singing Crystal, a spire of translucent quartz rising from a dry lakebed, humming a low, mournful note. At its base, nestled in a cradle of obsidian petals, glowed 3 droplets of liquid light, the tears of Ethon. Zik warned him, "Offer your truth, or it'll consume you." Joran stepped forward, heart pounding. He thought of what to give. His memories, his sword, his future. Then he knew. He pulled out a small, worn photograph, him and his sister on her wedding day, the one he'd missed, the last happy moment before war took everything. He placed it at the crystal's base. "I offer my regret," he said softly, "and my hope." The crystal's hum deepened. The tears floated into his palm, warm and pulsing. But as he turned to leave, the ground shook. From the dunes emerged not Sand Wyrms, but Dominion drop pods. And stepping out, clad in new armor, was Drell. "You didn't think I'd let you save her, did you?" he sneered. "The gene isn't a flaw, it's a filter. Only purebloods deserve to rule. Your love is an abomination." Kaylee's drew her blades. "Run, Joran. We'll hold them." He hesitated, but Mira shoved him toward the skiff. "Go. She's fading." As the skiff roared into the sky, Joran watched Kaylee's and Zik fight a losing battle below. Guilt tore at him, but Lyra's life hung in the balance. He returned to Solvath Spire at dawn. Lyra was unconscious, her skin now almost entirely silver, her breath shallow. The court physicians shook their heads. "Hours, maybe." Joran knelt beside her, pressing a tear to her lips. Nothing happened. Panic seized him. He tried another. Still nothing. Desperate, he did the only thing he could think of. He kissed her. Not out of romance. Out of sheer, stubborn refusal to lose her. And then light. The tears activated, flowing through her veins like liquid starlight. The silver receded. Color returned to her skin. Her eyes fluttered open. "You idiot," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "You came back." He laughed, crying. Someone had to feed Steve the cactus. But their relief was short-lived. As Lyra recovered, reports flooded in. Kaylee's and Zik had been captured by Drell's forces. Worse, Drell had allied with surviving Dominion warlords, promising them control of the southern continent in exchange for military support. And he'd taken something from the singing crystal too, a shard of corrupted quartz, pulsing with dark energy. He's building a weapon, Mira realized, analyzing sensor logs. One that can sever the bond permanently and kill anyone connected to it, including Joran, including Lyra, including their unborn child, because that night, as they clung to each other in the healing glow, Lyra had whispered the truth. The bond took root deeper than we knew. I'm carrying your child, Joran, half human, half Varelian, the first of a new kind. Now, with enemies closing in from orbit and underground, with traitors in the court and a ticking clock on their lives, Joran faced his greatest test yet. Not as a soldier, not as the chosen one, but as a man who loved and would burn the galaxy to protect his family. And somewhere in the desert, a shard of darkness pulsed, waiting. In the end, love proved stronger than prophecy. With Lyra restored and their child growing safely within her, Joran and the Empress rallied loyalists, freed Kayles and Zik in a daring midnight raid, and exposed Drell's alliance with the Dominion to the Galactic Council. Shamed and outmaneuvered, Drell was stripped of rank and exiled, not to a prison, but to a remote healing monastery, where he would spend his days tending gardens and reflecting on the cost of pride. Admiral Corvus, disgraced by his own treason, vanished into the Outer Rim. Rumor said he became a freighter pilot, forever haunted by the man he tried to break. The rite of union took place not in the Grand Hall, but in the quiet dunes where they'd first met, beneath the twin suns, surrounded by friends, former enemies, and a cactus named Steve in a ceremonial pot. Joran wore a simple tunic woven with human and Varelian threads. Lyra's orange hair flowed freely, crowned with desert blossoms that glowed faintly in her presence. When they exchanged vows, the blade of Ethon, now resting in a stone at the center of the circle, emitted a soft, approving hum, its light mingling with the stars above. They built a home on the edge of the Crimson Wastes, half of stone, half crystal, where human laughter echoed alongside Varelian lullabies. Their daughter, Serial, born with green-tinged skin, auburn hair, and eyes that shimmered like dawn, learned to walk between two worlds, speaking both Terran Standard and Old Varelian before her second birthday. Peace didn't come overnight, but it came. Trade routes opened. Schools taught shared history. Children played in parks where human and alien hands built sandcastles together. And every evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Joran and Lyra would sit on their balcony, fingers entwined, watching their daughter chase fire moths through the garden. No longer soldier and princess, but husband and wife, parents, partners. The galaxy still held dangers. But here, in this quiet corner of Zyra 7, kindness had won. And that was enough.